now the fun part. It's divine. I know I sound silly if I just tell you how good that is. I just think it's fabulous. Welcome to the Essential Cuisine Kitchen. I'm Susan Campbell, and I'm here to share with you some methods of making cultured vegetables and kefir. First, we're going to make the cultured vegetables, and if you've watched my a la oil segment or even the raw food segments of Essential Cuisine, then you would know all about cultured foods. Cultured foods are fermented foods. They are, in cultured vegetables specifically, have been cultured and are very rich with probiotic bacteria. That's alive, acidophilus, bifidus, and other probiotic elements that come together and ferment to make a living food. And when I say living, you've probably seen them often, because when we've opened the jars of rejuvenative foods, those are the live cultures, you actually, sometimes when we open the jar, they completely grow right out of the jar because they're still alive. Now, sauerkraut is a cultured vegetable, but often the sauerkraut has been pasteurized. The cultured vegetables that we've worked with before are not pasteurized, they're alive. So they've been made with raw vegetables, they've been cultured, and then they've been enjoyed. And so it's much like a canning process. There's several different ways to do it. I'm going to show you a couple variations. We're going to start with just a simple recipe of cabbage and some sea vegetables, and as we roll along, who knows what else we might throw into the mix here. But when you first get started, you want to just start with something very basic like cabbage, maybe some ketchup, some carrots. Yeah, you could put tomatoes in there, I guess, and some sea vegetables and some salt. So we're going to start off, we have to grind all the cabbage up, and you need a big workstation, and you really need a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, then you're probably just going to be doing lots and lots of chopping. And of course, that is always available to you. But before we went on camera here, we went ahead and shredded this cabbage and made it into a nice shredded consistency. Now you can ferment larger pieces, like in kimchi you'll see chunks of carrot and bigger pieces of cabbage and maybe bigger pieces of other kinds of vegetables. I personally like it when it's small like this. It's a little bit easier to chew. You know what? It's all good. But this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to start with. Now the way we're going to begin today is we're going to actually make a slurry culture mixture that we're going to add to the vegetables before we can them. So it's like a three-step process. You don't have to do this. You don't actually have to put a culture into it. And by culture, I mean a little packet. These are the grains that will actually come alive. And they are the friendly bacteria that will start to eat the sugars of the vegetables. We're even going to put a little sugar in there, so that it can start to eat the sugar and ferment and create this wonderful probiotic formula. The benefits of these foods we've gone over many times. You should eat these foods with every meal. You should eat them every day. They will highly aid you in your digestive process. This is a living food, and again, we suggest having it with all of your meals, or at least every day in your diet. So, getting started with creating a slurry mixture with the friendly bacteria, with the culture that we have purchased here. And incidentally, I get these from, you can get them in many different cultures. I do like this particular one from Wilderness Family Naturals. And you can get the information on our website. So I've got a little bit of water in there, a cup of water in the blender. And I'm going to just use my hands here and fill up another cup of cabbage. And there are instructions inside of the packets of culture that you get. And those are the instructions I'm following. Now, what you want to do is create a mixture here that's not too thick and not too thin. So what does that mean? That's what I asked when I was reading the directions. You want sort of a slurry. So we're going to play around and come up with a definition of slurry. Obviously this isn't mixing so well, so we're going to add a little bit more. And you know what? If we add too much, we can always add more cabbage. Whoa. Now I'm going to mix this up a little bit more, but first I'm going to throw in the sugar. Sugar's back here. I measured out a teaspoon of sugar, and this is a raw sugar so that it's full of its minerals. It hasn't been stripped of them. We're going to put the sugar in there. We're going to mix this just a little bit more, and then we're going to add the culture. Now, ideally, what you're going to want to do is when you get started, you want to just shred enough cabbage to put it into the blender and get this slurry going, because you want it to sit for at least 15 minutes. It can sit up to 2 hours and it won't hurt it. As a matter of fact, the longer it sits, the more time this friendly bacteria will have to eat up the sugar, which makes it all the more powerful because it's growing. It's going to grow anyway in your vegetables or in your canning jar when we finally place it to its home where it's going to ferment for several days. So it doesn't have to do it here, but I want to let you know that it doesn't hurt to do it longer. So you can see this grain is going in there. And this is several different grains. Sorry for the noise there. Several different strains, actually, of friendly bacteria, friendly flora. So I think that's a slurry. I think we have a slurry. We're going to let this sit now for about 15 minutes, and we're going to finish shredding all this cabbage. Incidentally, we're using 3 heads of cabbage, and we took off all the outer leaves first. You can see here. And we're going to wash these well, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use these at the end. But that's the way you want to start. You want to peel off your outer layers, get them nice and clean, keep them, and I'll show you what they're going to be used for when we come back. We left off grating, shredding a bunch of cabbage, and as you can see here, we have a bunch of cabbage. That's 3 heads of cabbage that we've got in some bowls here, plus I think we did about 4 or 5 carrots. And now I'm grating some ginger. We happen to have a nice big piece of ginger, and that's what I recommend when you're making your cultured vegetables, that you just put in whatever you want and you can experiment. I happen to love ginger, and we have this nice piece. So I'm going to go ahead and finish grating this, and then I'm going to add it, and we're going to create this slurry mixture and put it all together. You know, you can see that I didn't peel my ginger here. If I were going to be putting it in, you know, chopping the ginger up and putting it into any mixture, I would always peel it. And it's one of the reasons I do it this way. I don't have to peel it. It saves a step. Remember, it's all about simple. I had to laugh when I just said that because I don't know that cultured vegetables are all that simple. You know, actually they are simple. There's not a lot of recipes. There's no cooking involved. It's just, you know, some major prep and you need a lot of room. But when you make these yourself, I mean, look at the cost involved. You have 3 heads of cabbage, a few carrots, maybe a little ginger. You do have to buy your culture, but you can make them without the culture. And you get your own cultured vegetables that will last for such a long time. I mean, they'll last in the refrigerator indefinitely. You can keep them canned for, you know, you can let them sit for a few months, and sometimes I have friends that have made cultured vegetables, let them sit for weeks, and then they're just rich and rich and rich, very, very strong. So that's what's so great about making them. And it's so fun to explore. It's fun to watch them grow. It's just cool. Now here is the slurry mixture. It's probably not in camera for you, but it's the blender. I'm just going to give it a quick whirl. I had to add a little bit more water because it started to thicken. And it's always an experimentation process. And even though there's directions on how to make this, this is the reason I'm making this DVD, because even sometimes when you read directions and you come up with all these questions like, well, what about that? Or what if this? Look at all that ginger. Now, ginger is very much of a warming food, and it's wonderful for your digestion. And since we're making a digestive food here, I think it'll have a nice tang with it with a little bit of ginger. You could put garlic in it, you could put caraway seeds, you could put dill, you could put oregano or basil. I mean, you can just imagine what you can do to this. Let's get all this juice. Okay, so we've got this great mixture. I'm going to put this back here and we're going to start mixing this together. I'm just going to leave my hands all juiced up because I'm going to use them here. Oops. Now, you guys that are watching this are going to experiment right along with us because we're not sure how much of this is going to fit in to the dishes that we have available. Because what you want to do is this stuff needs to be packed down tight. Set this up there. And I'm going to use as much as I can get in here. I'm going to try to get all the carrots, and I think that's about as much as I can fit. We may have to add some more. I'm going to go ahead and put this mixture in. I can see that. I'm going to give this another swirl because the ginger's all floating at the top. There we go. So now this has been sitting just about 15 minutes. I think it took us that long. Wow, can you see that? Just put that great probiotic mixture all in there. And now I'm just going to mix this up. You want it to be wet. You want it to be liquidy. Now, because we made a mixture for this, we made a slurry probiotic mixture, it may not need as much weight. But the key to this, and you're going to see when we pack it into the jars and into the dishes, that it needs to have a lot of weight on it, and that weight is what pushes the juice out and makes it juicy. Remember all these vegetables that we've been opening and enjoying from Rejuvenative Foods, these cultured vegetables? Remember how they look? They're very, very juicy, because this would not grow very well without a lot of juice to it. Now, when you make cultured vegetables, you never want to put it in a metal bowl, and you don't ever want to put it in a plastic bowl. Now, I know we're using a plastic bowl right now, but that's okay just to mix it. But I don't mean you don't want them to ferment in plastic, and you don't want them to be in metal. They need to be in glass or a porcelain that for sure doesn't have any lead or any toxic substances. Because remember, this is alive, and this probiotic formula is going to be eating away and growing and fermenting, and you don't want it to leach any toxic metals from any containers that it's in. So you've got to remember that. I think that there are some plastics you can use. I like to stay away from them, but nowadays they're starting to make some healthier plastics so that they don't have the components in them that are dangerous to our health. So this is feeling pretty good. It's nice and wet. All right. Okay, now I'm going to wipe my hands off here, and I'm going to show you one way of making these. You know where, on a side note, you know where I talked about the Grain and Salt Society? They're the ones that have the Celtic sea salt. They're called the Grain and Salt Society, and they're a company out of Ashland, Oregon. Excuse me, it's not Ashland, Oregon. It's Asheville, North Carolina. Grain and Salt Society. They are the ones that distribute and harvest and bring over that great Celtic sea salt. Well, they have a great catalog, and if you want to go to their website, it's CelticSeaSalt.com. You can get the information on my website. They sell these cool crocks, and they're about this tall. They are so cool. And what they are is they're a brown porcelain pot, very heavy, and they're designed so that you can actually put blocks inside and weight the cultured vegetables down. They're a crock made for making cultured vegetables. I have one, and I love it. Here, this is some sea lettuce. I love to put sea vegetables in here because, first of all, they give a great color. They're going to add a great salty flavor, and guess what else? Minerals. And we want this to be mineral rich. These tongs are so great. These are bamboo, from Totally Bamboo, where they make the bamboo furniture, dishes, cutting boards. And they are laminated without any formaldehyde, so they're safe to use in all your foods. even probiotic foods. Oh, I wish you could smell this. It's just a great aromas from these sea vegetables. Okay, now we're going to put this back in. Oh, another thing you might want to add is salt. You can definitely add some salt, and that will bring a lot of good flavor to it too, and I have some right here. And I'm going to go ahead. This is the one thing that I will put salt in when I make it. And you'll notice if you go to buy rejuvenative cultured vegetables, if you don't want to make your own and they don't carry them at your store, ask for them. Ask them to carry them. And I think probably you can mail order them too. But they make so many different flavors, and they make them salt-free and with salt. But we didn't put much salt in here. This is a good workout. Okay, I'm going to put it back in this bowl. I don't know about you, but kids love to get their hands in food. And I like to get my hands in food. So this is a good opportunity. And you know, if you can train your children, if you have children and you're watching this, if you can train your children to work with some of this equipment, I have found that kids have a blast. They just think equipment is so cool. You have to supervise them, of course, and it depends how old they are. But I taught a kids camp at Laguna Beach Culinary Arts. It's a home chef school where I used to teach. And the kids had such a blast in the kitchen. And I think they had to be 10 or 11 years old. And we taught them knife skills and taught them how to work some of the equipment and even taught them how to work on the stove. Let me put this back here. I might use that bowl again. Now I'm just going to press this down. Let's get these every little bit of vegetables we can. You can use your fists. Can you hear that? Let me see if we can get that on camera. Now the more you press it, what we can do sometimes when you use a jar, if we were pressing this into a jar, you actually get a dowel like that you would put in your closet, a wooden dowel. And that's what you use to press in a jar. And I'm going to show you how to do that too. See, the more I press, the more the juice comes up. Can you get that on camera? You can see how the juice is really coming to the top now. See that? I don't know if you can get it. But the more I'm pressing, the more juicy this is. I'm actually pressing the juice out of the cabbage. Oh, it's coming up wonderfully. Now you'll notice that we put the whole slurry mixture into this particular batch. And that means that if we make more, which we're going to do, it's not going to have the slurry mixture with it. It's just going to be the vegetables. They will ferment on their own. You don't have to put a culture with them. I think they're stronger, but they'll find their own way to do their own fermentation process. This is great. Very, very juicy. See that? You can see how I packed it all down. I think we're about there. This is the way we're making this one. Now watch this. I'm going to put a glass plate on top. I'm going to turn it upside down so it's kind of cups. Right there. And what you want to do is you want to put weight on it so that it presses down and it continues to press. And the heavier that weight is, or just so it's nice and heavy so that it continually puts a weight, so those juices can continually be pushed out of the cabbage and then come back up and start to bubble and ferment. I'm going to put these tiles. We're being very innovative, and the reason I want to show you this is so that you can do the same. We're going to put these tiles on top, and then we're going to put a rock on top. Isn't that cool? Now, what you would do is set this in a dark place. I've got a towel, and this will continue, this will start to ferment. You want to clean it off. And sometimes if a little bit of a mold starts to grow on the top, that's okay. Don't let that worry you. Just kind of scrape it off when it's all done. In a cold climate like here, it would probably take about 7 days to get ripe enough to where you'd want to eat it. And what you would do is you would take it out of here, out of your bowl, you would put it in some canning jars, make sure the lids are really tight, and refrigerate them. Now, they'll continue to grow a little bit, but very, very slowly, slow enough to where you probably wouldn't recognize it. And so that's what you do when it's all done. Before it's done, you might want to check on them. If it's a very warm climate like Hawaii, like where I live, they could be ready in 3 days. If you can hold them till 7 days or even 14 in a cold climate, you're going to be much better off. I think they're going to be a little bit richer, a little bit tangier, and probably be more full of friendly bacteria. I think that's about it. You cover them up, and you just let it go set them somewhere in a cool, dry place, and let them do their own thing. And make sure that this is heavy enough. Now this is heavy enough, and I'm going to tell you why I know. I barely touched it, and I saw some water bubble up. I just barely touched it. And so that's going to be nice and heavy. If you don't have tiles, just use a nice big heavy rock. If you had a bigger bowl and you could only fill it halfway, that would be fine too. Just put your plate down on top of it, and the plate is only to serve to hold something heavy. And then you put your rock on top, and then you cover the top of your dish or bucket or whatever it is with a cloth. So I'm going to move these over and let them grow. And I pulled this out because I just wanted to show you what a cool dish this is. This is a great measuring cup. You could also make them in here. You just would have a lesser amount. Here's a jar. This would be a great jar if you were to make them in this. And what you would do, and we don't quite have enough cabbage, but I'm going to show you in another jar. We're going to get a smaller canning jar, and I'll show you how to do it there with this remaining amount that we have. But you would fill it clear up to the top, smush it down with a dowel or something like this. This is too wide, but the dowel works really well for these deep dishes, and you just keep smushing it down. And then you leave about this much room at the top, and you start adding pieces of carrots and then cabbage. You can fold over the big cabbage leaves and something that's thick and more sturdy, and that's what you press down with, and then you close it tight. And the weight that we made with the rock and with the tiles, that same weight, you're going to make by pressing until you get this so tight that you just barely can close. It's like a suitcase when you've taken too many clothes on your vacation. You want to get it that tight so you can barely get this closed. And then when you open it, like 7 days later, you got to better look out because it might just go zoo and just grow or burst open like a champagne bottle that you've shaken. So that's how you do that, and I am going to demonstrate in a smaller bottle. I have another jar. I'm going to put this remaining cabbage. Now I want to say a couple things about, when you put these aside to ferment, you want to put them in a dark corner somewhere out of the way of any heat or a bunch of light. And that's one of the reasons we cover it with the cloth, so that you can keep any bugs out if any gnats want to come around. It stays clean that way, and it also keeps it nice and dark. And the other thing on the mold, if it does create a little mold on the top, you definitely want to scrape it off because it will spoil the taste of the culture. I mean, who wants to eat mold? Not me. Okay, so I can already feel this coming down. Now we didn't put the sea vegetables in this, and I did that on purpose so that we just have a plain one, so that when these are all harvested in about 7 days, so we can tell the difference. It also doesn't have the ginger. It's just plain cabbage and carrots. And I think this will illustrate on how easy this can be and how you don't have to get, so fancy, because you're still going to get the benefit of the food. And it'll be real interesting to see. I'm going to take some of these pieces here. Don't want to let anything go to waste. And we've got a nice clean surface here. Okay, now I'm going to press this down. Okay, can you hear that? So we want to keep pushing and get that really juicy. Now, when you're making these, it takes a little bit to estimate how much is going to fill a jar. Like, it looked like that would fill my jar, but when I start pressing down, then I got a lot of room left. And this is why you put some hard daikon or carrots or even potatoes, some hard pieces of vegetables at the top. Okay, I'm going to give that one more Can you see it starting to juice up yet? I can. I can see little bubbles down there. But the more I press, the lower it gets, so I know that it's good that I'm doing this. I'm just going to scrape the sides now. Now, this is why you save the leaves. I could have easily put these leaves on top of this other mixture that we made before I put the plate down, but I purposely left them off because I knew I was going to illustrate this for you. And it's also a way for my cousins who live here that they can start watching the vegetables. If it were covered with this layer, they wouldn't be able to see it so well. And we're making this one a little bit differently because we're going to pack this down and close it with an airtight lid. So what I'm doing is I'm going to tear it up, and create a nice platform that I can just keep putting in here like this, fold these up, and smush them down. And we're just going to put more and more and more. Just keep smushing them in there until I fill it up to the top, and then we'll put the lid on and we'll let it make itself. That's a pretty cool cook, don't you think? You just make something once and then it just cooks on its own for several days. I kind of like that. Let Mother Nature do its trick. Save you a lot of time. This is also a very economical way to have cultured vegetables. When I often hear people say, oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy, it's really not true. I have a lot of information in one of my books that I'm working on right now that'll be out in 2007 that actually has some price comparisons. It's actually quite economical to eat well. It might seem at the point of purchase that things cost you more. Let's take, for instance, cultured vegetables. I think they're like about $10 or around there, anywhere from 8 to 10 depending on where you live, for one jar. But you know what? That's $10 worth of great food. Even if you have a couple of teaspoons a day with your meals, it lasts you a long time. And if you can't afford those, then you can make your own, because this probably cost under $10 for all of that we're going to make here. Because we only use 3 heads of cabbage and the culture, 1 packet of culture, which probably cost a couple of dollars, and that's it. A few carrots. Always use organic, of course. That just kind of goes without saying with essential cuisine. Let's try another pound at this. See, now this gives you some leverage. Gives you like a nice big, see the juice coming up? You see that in the camera? Watch that. See the juice? That's when you know you've pressed it enough. That is purely from the cabbage. None of that is from any slurry. I didn't add any water. And that is what is going to start to ferment. It's going to, so to speak, eat itself. Eat the sugars from the food. That's why I like to put a little bit of carrot too, and sometimes beets are great because beets and carrots have a lot of sugar. And that's why we added some sugar to the other one. I wouldn't add sugar to one that didn't have the culture in it though to start. Okay, I think we can get a couple more in here, and we're going to get that suitcase, too full of suitcase, and see if we can get it. I'm getting on my tippy toes. Oh, it's starting to rain again. I think I got it too full. Okay, I do. I'm going to take this one out. There we go. There we go. These are great lids because you can hold them down while you twist this thing. Wow. All right, we did it. We did it. I'll wipe this off for you. There you go. See, it's got a little air in there, but I think we pressed most of it out, and it's going to be okay too. If a little mold grows on the top, you can keep an eye on it and just wipe it off the top. There you go, your uncultured vegetables. It was worth it. Trust me. You know what we're going to do next? We're going to make the kefir. We've now made cultured vegetable. Kefir is cultured milk. So stay tuned, that's next.